In just 14 months, the Trump administration dissolved decades of cryptocurrency enforcement infrastructure, dismissed or closed at least 12 major regulatory cases against crypto companies, and appointed over 200 officials holding combined cryptocurrency assets worth somewhere between $175 million and $340 million. Meanwhile, the president's own family collected $802 million from crypto ventures in the first half of 2025 alone. What we're looking at is regulatory capture in real time. The process where an industry gains control over the agencies meant to police it, and what that capture costs the American public. Today, we're examining 5 documented cases where government officials with personal financial interests in cryptocurrency made enforcement decisions that directly benefited their investments. We'll look at how enforcement collapsed in numbers, and we'll ask the question that should have been asked before any of these decisions got made: who benefits when crypto regulations disappear? Start with Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. The Senate confirmed him on the 5th of March, 2025, making him the second highest official at the Department of Justice. Before that, he defended Trump in court through criminal trials. His financial disclosures showed cryptocurrency holdings worth somewhere between $159,000 and $485,000, a portfolio that included Bitcoin, Solana, Ethereum, and Coinbase stock. His ethics agreement required him to sell these assets within 90 days of confirmation. That gave him until the 5th of June, 2025. But about 1 month into the job, before he actually divested from anything, Blanche issued a memo that would reshape how the federal government handled crypto enforcement. The memo carried a telling title: Ending Regulation by Prosecution. What it did was order the Department of Justice to stop all investigations into cryptocurrency companies, dealers, and exchanges launched during the Biden years. Along with that, he eliminated the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team, a specialized unit that had spent 3 years building cases against crypto criminals. Consider what that unit had accomplished. They secured a conviction against someone who defrauded crypto investors of $110 million. They obtained a guilty plea from a Russian operator who processed over $700 million through cryptocurrency exchanges for drug trafficking and money laundering. They convicted a cryptocurrency exchange operator who helped launder billions from hackers, ransomware attacks, identity theft schemes, and drug trafficking. And they were investigating Binance, the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange, which they found had failed to report suspicious transactions for Hamas, Al-Qaeda, and other terrorist organizations. All of that disappeared, and it happened while Blanche still owned significant cryptocurrency investments that would benefit directly from reduced enforcement. Virginia Cantor, a former ethics lawyer for the White House, Treasury Department, and Securities and Exchange Commission serving under 4 different presidents, put the conflict simply: if you are invested in that industry and now making a decision that could affect whether or not the DOJ is going to pursue prosecutions, that is an obvious conflict of interest. She understood what the memo meant in practical terms. Now, Blanche did eventually divest his crypto holdings, transferring them to his adult children and a grandchild in June 2025. But here is what the ethics experts noticed. While federal law prohibits conflicts of interest with spouses and minor children, it doesn't specifically prohibit transferring assets to adult children. Blanche had complied with the law technically, but the spirit of that law was different. Kedrick Payne, Senior Ethics Director at the Campaign Legal Center, explained it this way: the purpose of the law is to eliminate even the appearance that an official's decisions are influenced by their financial interests. That purpose is defeated when an official simply gives conflicted assets to adult children. What that means is Blanche still had a financial interest in crypto policy. It just belonged to his family members now, instead of him personally. By January 2026, ethics watchdog groups and 6 US senators demanded an investigation into what had happened, but the enforcement decision had already moved into effect. The crypto industry had already received billions in avoided prosecution. The Securities and Exchange Commission is the primary regulator of the cryptocurrency industry in America. During the Biden years, Gary Gensler led the SEC and brought 33 enforcement actions against crypto companies in a single year. The agency sued Coinbase, Binance, Ripple, and dozens of others, arguing that certain cryptocurrencies were unregistered securities and that platforms operating without proper licenses were breaking established law. Then Paul Atkins became CC chair on the 21st of April, 2025. Before that, he founded and ran Patamak Global Partners, a financial consulting firm focused on the digital asset sector. As an SEC commissioner from 2002 to 2008, he decriticized large corporate penalties, arguing that shareholders often bore the cost of fines instead of the wrongdoers. He also co-chaired the Digital Chamber S Token Alliance, a policy group that advocated for favorable crypto regulation. According to his financial disclosures, Atkins owned crypto-related investments worth up to $6 million before his confirmation. His ethics agreement said he de-sell a crypto investment fund and equity in 2 crypto companies. When ProPublica reviewed the compliance paperwork showing what he de-sold, the documents didn't mention any crypto-related sales. An SEC spokesman acknowledged Atkins complied with his ethics obligations, but wouldn't he say when or if he actually sold the crypto holdings. Under Atkins, the SEC began systematically dismantling the crypto enforcement infrastructure that had been built up over years. In February 2025, just months into his tenure, the SEC dropped its case against Coinbase, one of the largest cryptocurrency exchanges operating anywhere. The case had alleged that Coinbase was operating as an unregistered securities broker. Within weeks, the SEC closed investigations into Gemini, Uniswap Labs, and OpenSea. These weren't early-stage matters either. The SEC had already issued Wells notices, which are formal notifications that an agency intends to bring enforcement charges. That happens late in the process, not early. The cases never materialized. By May 2025, the SEC formally dismissed cases against Binance, the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange. By the end of 2025, the SEC had closed cases or investigations against at least 12 crypto companies and individuals. The official SEC announcement in April 2026 listed the 7 crypto cases that were dismissed in February 2025 or later. Coinbase, Cumberland, WLC, Consensus Software, Paywood, Kraken, as parent company, Dragon Chain, Balena, and Binance. The raw numbers reveal the pattern: 33 cryptocurrency enforcement actions in 2024, 13 in 2025. That is a 60% decline in a single year. When the SEC issued its fiscal year 2025 results in April 2026, it justified the enforcement pullback explicitly. The agency stated that prior enforcement had relied on novel legal theories, and that crypto cases had identified no direct investor harm. According to the SEC's reasoning, the prior commission had been misguided, focused on volume and headlines, rather than genuine investor protection. But that framing overlooked something critical. Those cases existed because Congress had passed actual securities laws. If a company is selling investment products that meet the legal definition of securities, federal law says those products need to be registered, or they're illegal. The SEC's argument wasn't that enforcement was wrong legally. It was that enforcement should stop being used to establish what the law meant. Howard Lutnick became Commerce Secretary in 2025, and before that he was the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, a financial services firm with billions of dollars invested in cryptocurrency. Cantor Fitzgerald also serves as the primary banker for Tether, one of the world's largest stablecoin issuers, which is cryptocurrency, pegged to the US dollar. Lutnick signed an ethics agreement requiring him to divest his stake in Cantor Fitzgerald. But there was a condition attached. The White House issued him a limited waiver, allowing him to work on general issues that could affect Cantor Fitzgerald while the transfer was being completed. That waiver didn't arrive until the 8th of July, 2025, nearly 5 months after he was sworn in. During that period, while Lutnick still maintained financial ties to his firm, he took several pro-crypto actions. He announced that Trump would create a Bitcoin strategic reserve. The Commerce Department got involved in the president's crypto working group. He published economic data on 9 major blockchains, a move designed to foster confidence in the digital asset market. Only after these actions had taken hold did Lutnick transfer his stake in Cantor Fitzgerald to his adult sons, who run the firm now. When the Commerce Department addressed this situation, a spokesperson said Lutnick fully complied with the terms of his ethics agreement and had no economic gains or losses from the transfer. That statement avoids the central question: if it is improper to make pro-crypto policy decisions while you personally own a crypto-focused business, is it fundamentally different to make those same decisions while your adult children own that business? Everything happening behind the scenes, the enforcement rollback, the policy shifts, the deregulatory moves, all of it occurred against the backdrop of something extraordinary. The Trump family has owned cryptocurrency business ventures. Trump and his family launched World Liberty Financial in September 2024. After Trump won the November 2024 election, the company began raising capital aggressively. And by the 31st of March 2025, World Liberty Financial had brought in over $500 million. By August 2025, the company was exploring additional funding and partnerships. But here is where the numbers become striking. A Reuters investigation, published on the 28th of October 2025, found that the Trump family made $802 million from sales of crypto assets in the first half of 2025 alone. $800 million in 6 months from a family whose patriarch now controls the regulatory apparatus overseeing that very industry. The mechanisms generating this wealth included meme coins issued by Trump and his wife Melania, which allowed the public to send cryptocurrency directly to the incoming president. It included ownership stakes in World Liberty Financial. Strategic partnerships and fundraising activities accelerated as pro-crypto policies moved into place. The announcement of a strategic Bitcoin reserve came in May 2025. In July 2025, World Liberty Financial SUSD1 stablecoin became the official cryptocurrency for a $2 billion Abu Dhabi investment fund deal. August 2025 brought news of a $1 billion partnership between Crypto.com and Trump Media, deepening the integration between Trump's business interests and the crypto industry. What deserves attention is the timing. Trump entered office on the 20th of January, 2025. Just 11 weeks later, on the 7th of April, 2025, Todd Blanche disbanded the DOJ, Crypto Enforcement Unit. By February 2025, the CSE had begun dropping cases. By May 2025, major cryptocurrency exchanges facing enforcement actions found those cases dismissed. These regulatory changes didn't occur in isolation. They happened while Trump family members were actively profiting from the industry and while the president himself was implementing crypto-friendly policies that directly benefited his financial interests. The situation took another turn in April 2026 when Justin Sunday, a crypto billionaire who de-invested $75 million in World Liberty Financial, went public with allegations that the company had secretly implemented a backdoor blacklisting function, essentially a hidden mechanism to freeze accounts. Sunday called World Liberty of operating a governance scam and threatened legal action. The irony was complete. A crypto venture backed by the president, which had benefited from regulatory rollbacks and favorable policy decisions, was now itself the subject of investor fraud allegations. The conflicts of interest didn't stop at the highest levels. ProPublica's analysis of financial disclosures found that at least 216 Trump appointees held cryptocurrency investments at the time of their nomination, with combined holdings worth somewhere between $175 million and $340 million. During the first 2 years of Biden's presidency, approximately 24 appointees held cryptocurrency holdings, totaling less than $7 million combined. The difference is striking, roughly 25 to 48 times more crypto holdings in the Trump administration. Consider specific examples from cabinet-level officials. Sean Duffy, Transportation Secretary, disclosed between $550,000 and $1.1 million in Bitcoin holdings, spread across multiple accounts and investment vehicles. In May 2025, ProPublica reported that Duffy had sold between $75,000 and $600,000 in stocks 2 days before Trump announced new tariffs, raising questions about whether he benefited from advanced knowledge of policy decisions. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., nominated as Secretary of Health and Human Services, disclosed holdings worth between $1 million and $5 million. Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, disclosed between $15,000 and $50,000 in Bitcoin. Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary, reported between $15,000 and $50,000 in Bitcoin and Bitcoin-related income. Vice President J.D. Vance held between $250,000 and $500,000. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent disclosed between $250,000 and $500,000 in cryptocurrency. What this pattern meant was that officials with regulatory or policy authority over the crypto industry had substantial personal financial interests in seeing that industry succeed. The SEC chair owned up to $6 million in crypto. The Deputy Attorney General owned up to $485,000. The Commerce Secretary's firm was the primary banker for a major stablecoin issuer. These weren't T-minor conflicts. They were systematic and disclosed, which means the administration knew about them. None of this happened randomly. The crypto industry had deliberately invested in making sure that friendly politicians would control regulatory policy. During the 2024 election cycle, the cryptocurrency industry spent unprecedented sums on political campaigns, according to data from multiple sources. Crypto-related Sue Pascal C's alone spent $131 million on congressional races. Direct corporate spending from crypto companies like Coinbase and Ripple exceeded $119 million. Overall, the industry raised more than $245 million for political purposes. To put that in perspective, crypto corporations accounted for nearly half of all corporate political spending in the 2024 election cycle. That is not campaign contributions in a minor category. That is the entire category of corporate political spending. Crypto was the dominant force, and that investment paid off. Trump, who had pledged during his campaign that he would be America's crypto president, won the election. The industry, which had bet heavily on a Trump victory, suddenly had a president who was also a crypto entrepreneur with hundreds of millions of dollars in personal crypto wealth. Within days of taking office, Trump signed an executive order promoting digital asset growth. Within weeks, enforcement cases began being dismissed. Within months, regulatory policy had shifted from enforcement to accommodation. The crypto industry had purchased what economists call regulatory capture, the process where an industry gains control over the agencies meant to regulate it. And it happened in the open. Understanding what the dissolution of crypto enforcement actually cost matters, because the abstractions about regulatory philosophy can obscure the real-world impact. The National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team that Blanche disbanded had built infrastructure to combat the worst crimes enabled by cryptocurrency. These included ransomware, where criminal organizations encrypt businesses' computers and demand payment in cryptocurrency. They included money laundering schemes, moving drug trafficking proceeds through crypto exchanges. They included financing for terrorist organizations like Hamas and Al-Qaeda. The DOJ's cases had produced convictions and guilty pleas from people and companies committing these crimes. The Binance investigation that was underway found that the company failed to prevent and report suspicious transactions for terrorist organizations. Changpeng Zhao, Binance founder, eventually pled guilty to anti-money laundering violations, served 4 months in prison, and agreed to pay $4.3 billion in penalties. Then, in October 2025, Trump pardoned him. Meanwhile, the actual scope of crypto crime was expanding. Money laundering through crypto reached $82 billion in 2025, up from $10 billion in 2020. Total illicit crypto activity hit $158 billion in 2025, up 145% from 2024. Stolen funds from cryptocurrency services in the first half of 2025 alone exceeded $2.17 billion, more than the entirety of 2024 by itself. The experts who'd worked in crypto enforcement raised alarms about what was happening. 6 US senators noted that shutting down crypto investigations would help support drug trafficking, child exploitation, and scams. But the enforcement infrastructure was already gone. The irony cuts deep. The secondar justified their enforcement rollback by saying that prior cases had inflicted no direct investor harm and relied on novel legal theories. But those weren't the cases being dismissed. The cases being dismissed were the ones based on straightforward legal arguments. Coinbase was operating as a securities broker without a license. Binance failed to comply with anti-money laundering laws. Ripple sold unregistered securities. These weren't novel theories. They were established law being enforced normally. What actually happened was the new administration didn't like the results that enforcing the law produced, so it stopped enforcing. Something worth noting about this entire arc is that none of it was technically illegal in the strictest sense. Blanche transferred his crypto holdings to adult children, which technically doesn't violate the federal conflict of interest statute. Atkins claimed to have complied with his ethics agreement, even if the documentation raises questions. Lutnick operated under a waiver that allowed him to work on issues affecting his company. The cryptocurrency holdings of cabinet members were disclosed publicly, but James Thurber, a professor emeritus at American University, who worked on federal ethics reforms and served as a congressional staffer, saw it differently. He described the Trump administration's approach to ethics as unprecedented. He pointed to President Jimmy Carter, who put his peanut farm into a blind trust to avoid any appearance of conflict. He noted that Obama and Biden had required their appointees to sign ethics pledges committing to avoid conflicts of interest. Trump rescinded those requirements on his first day in office. Tonya Evans, a former law professor at Penn State Dickinson Law, who consults on digital economy policy, identified a gap between what is technically legal and what should be legal. My concern, she explained, is not so much that people who understand crypto are in leadership positions, but that ethics frameworks may not yet meet this critical fork in the road of development, especially if divestiture takes the form of passing to family. We are a long way from President Carter's peanut farm. What she was identifying is regulatory capture in its most explicit form. Not corruption, not bribery, but a systematic alignment between the financial interests of the regulators and the interests of the regulated industry. The crypto enforcement collapse was dramatic, but it was only one piece of a much larger pattern. Watchdog groups reported that the Trump administration dropped or dismissed enforcement actions against at least 89 companies in its first month alone. By January 2026, that number had expanded to 1966 companies. The administration also announced an enforcement pause on Foreign Corrupt Practices Act violations in February 2025. As a result, the SEC brought zero FCPA enforcement actions in fiscal year 2025. The SEC also reorganized its enforcement division in April 2025, reducing management and reporting capacity, which further slowed the pace of investigations. The SEC's overall enforcement actions dropped from 583 in fiscal year 2024 to 456 in fiscal year 2025. Against public companies specifically, the decline was even sharper. Only 4 enforcement actions against public companies were initiated under the new CAC administration, the fewest in a single year since 2013. More specifically in the crypto space, in fiscal year 2024, the SEC brought 33 cryptocurrency-related enforcement actions. In fiscal year 2025, it brought 13. 7 of those 13 were actually dismissed. That is a 60% decline in crypto enforcement in a single year. The SEC chair justified this by arguing that prior cases had consumed resources, not commensurate with any measure of investor harm. But that misses the point. The purpose of laws against selling unregistered securities is to prevent harm from happening. If you only prosecute after harm occurs, you've already failed. Enforcement is meant to be preventative. What we've documented here is regulatory capture happening in real time. It is not a conspiracy in the traditional sense, with secret meetings where crypto executives and government officials agree to dismantle enforcement. It is more straightforward than that. The president appointed people with direct financial interests in the crypto industry to positions overseeing that industry. Those people made decisions that enriched themselves, their families, and the industry they were supposed to regulate. Because the president had his own financial interest in crypto, he supported those decisions. The result is that an entire regulatory framework built over years, tested in courtrooms, and enforced by specialized units, was dismantled in the span of months. The question worth asking is what the crypto industry was worth paying for this outcome. According to FEC disclosures and campaign finance data, the crypto industry spent approximately $245 million during the 2024 election cycle. In return, they got regulatory rollbacks worth billions. They got enforcement cases dismissed. They got a president who implemented policies directly benefiting their business. They got cabinet members who owned significant crypto holdings. And they got Todd Blanche to disband the unit investigating them. One more figure deserves consideration. The Trump family made $802 million from crypto in the first half of 2025 alone. That is $802 million that went to the president and his family from an industry that the president, as appointees, were supposed to regulate. It is impossible to know exactly how much of that increase came from the regulatory rollbacks and enforcement disappearance. But it is equally impossible to believe it had nothing to do with it. The broader implication is clear when the people making regulatory decisions have personal financial stakes in the outcomes of those decisions. The regulations stop working. They stop protecting the public and start serving the wealthy. When you combine that with campaign finance, where industries can spend hundreds of millions to ensure friendly politicians are in power, you get capture. Regulatory capture isn't usually prosecuted as corruption. It is perfectly legal, but it is corrosive because it means that laws exist on paper, but not in practice. It means that enforcement infrastructure gets dismantled, not because it was wrong, but because it was inconvenient. It means the wealthy and well-connected can profit from industries that are supposed to be policed. The 216 Trump appointees with cryptocurrency holdings, the $802 million the Trump family made from crypto, the 7 cases the SEC dismissed, the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team that no longer exists. These are the artifacts of regulatory capture. They re-proof of what happens when you elect a president with direct financial interests in the industries he is supposed to oversee, and then staff his administration with people who have their own crypto fortunes. The only question for the future is whether anything will be done about it. The system currently permits all of this. The only constraint is political will, and right now, the people in power benefit from the current arrangement.